"Get out of here and wait outside. You have no reason to be here." That voice cut through the afternoon air like a knife. Cold, contemptuous, and absolute. The attendant screamed, "I'll call security if you don't leave right now. People like you don't fly on flights like this." Leora Hale, the black woman, stood frozen. The silence that followed felt as though it swallowed the entire airport. Rain began to patter across the runway at Westchester County Airport. And in that moment, a female billionaire found herself face to face with an employee who had no idea she was shouting at the owner of the whole company. What the attendant didn't realize was that she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. That afternoon, the sky over Westchester was a blanket of leaden clouds, heralding an oncoming storm. Leora Hale stepped out of her glossy black Mercedes, her designer stilettos clicking lightly on the damp concrete. Fresh from sealing a billion-dollar deal in London, all she wanted was the peace of the premium lounge before boarding her private flight home. But the instant Leora approached the first-class lounge door, Clifford Vance, the lounge manager, spoke up with thinly veiled doubt. "I'm sorry, ma'am. This lounge is for first-class passengers only. Please present your boarding pass and membership card so we can verify your credentials." Leora raised an eyebrow at his challenging tone. For years, she had slipped in here without question, usually at quieter hours, to avoid notice. Not wanting to argue, she kindly retrieved her platinum card and boarding pass from her clutch and handed them to him. Clifford took them, frowned, and held them up to the overhead light, as if checking for forgeries. He sighed loudly, making sure others could hear. "These look unusual. I've never seen cards like this before. Are you sure you belong here?" Leora's voice remained calm. "I assure you these are genuine." "Fine, but you'll have to wait out here while I verify," he said coldly, a sneer playing at his lips as he pointed toward the rain-drenched glass doors. "We need to protect our high-end customers' privacy and comfort." Leora felt the insult behind his polite words, but she stepped outside without a word. Clifford immediately turned to greet an elderly white man who had just arrived, his entire demeanor softening. "Good afternoon, Mr. Patterson. Your flight is boarding shortly. Please come right in." The man was ushered inside without so much as an ID check. Outside, Leora watched, her chest tightening with both disappointment and fury. Now it was raining hard, each cold drop soaking her luxury coat. One by one, wealthy white passengers strolled past her unchallenged, while Leora waited, treated like an intruder at her own lounge. After a long wait, Clifford finally reappeared. His eyes still clouded with suspicion, he announced reluctantly, "All right, I'll let you in because of the downpour, but we'll be keeping a close eye on you." Those words felt like shards of glass against Leora's pride. Here she was, a powerful CEO at the helm of an aviation empire, being humiliated in her own company simply because her skin didn't match Clifford's narrow prejudices. She stepped into the lounge drenched and disheveled, but her gaze was unshakable. Today, she resolved, she would let their true colors show before she personally overhauled the toxic culture that ran through her company. What Leora didn't yet know was that this was only the opening act in the most humiliating, tension-filled ordeal of her life, a confrontation she would have to win, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever faced the same injustice. The moment Leora crossed the threshold into the premium lounge, the warm glow of crystal chandeliers flooded her face, an almost cruel contrast to the chill of the rain she'd just endured outside. Instead of soothing her, it only magnified the sting already etched deep in her mind. Clifford Vance followed her every step with a wary gaze, as though she were a potential threat that needed constant surveillance. Leaning toward the attendant beside him, he whispered loud enough for Leora to hear every word. "Keep an eye on that woman. Let me know immediately if anything's off." Silently, Leora settled into a plush leather chair in the corner, observing calmly. No one here knew that she was the owner of this airline empire, the very person responsible for paying the salaries of those who'd just openly insulted her. Her expression was serene, but beneath that calm surface a storm was gathering. Clifford returned to his desk, tension still evident in his features. He believed wholeheartedly that he'd done the right thing. In his long years managing the Westchester Premium Lounge, he prided himself on a special skill, the ability to spot genuine first-class passengers, a sixth sense he felt only true professionals possessed. In his experience, all real VIPs shared the same profile: middle-aged white men in tailored suits, or at least carrying the air of long-established wealth. A lone black woman seated here shattered every stereotype he'd ever held. As Leora sat quietly, Clifford kept glancing at her with suspicion. He flicked back to his computer screen to double-check her details. The display read L. Hale with a tidy Owner/CEO tag beside it. But Clifford either didn't register the title or refused to accept that he could be wrong. In his world, the idea that a solitary black woman, unaccompanied by assistants or security, could be a powerful CEO was simply inconceivable. From across the lounge, a young attendant named Sienna Reyes watched Leora with confusion and guilt. Sienna had seen her forced to wait in the rain while white passengers passed unchallenged. A flicker of doubt ignited in her mind, but she didn't feel brave enough to speak up. In her junior position, she felt helpless and remained silent. Meanwhile, Leora felt the bias she faced extend far beyond one man. It was like a silent virus infecting every staff member, every wary glance, every cautious gesture she encountered. Bitterness welled within her as she realized this wasn't just about her own injustice. It was a failure of the entire system she'd built, a system that tacitly condoned toxic behavior. Suddenly, Clifford stood and strode toward her. He bent slightly at the waist, his tone lowered, soft but laden with authority. "I want to make this perfectly clear. We'll be watching you closely. Any suspicious behavior, and I will call security immediately." "Do you do this to all guests?" Leora asked evenly, her voice calm, yet carrying an unspoken weight. "Or only to those who look like me?" Clifford froze for a moment, perhaps taken aback by her composed directness. Then, recovering his usual arrogance, he replied coldly, "I do it for anyone I feel who needs monitoring." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Leora's question hanging unanswered. In that instant, she felt the full force of the insult, not just personally, but on behalf of everyone who'd suffered similarly, without the power to fight back. In the luxe hush of the lounge, Leora made a crucial decision. She would not wield her authority to punish these individuals right away. Instead, she would wait patiently, allowing them to reveal their true selves. She knew that to effect real change in her organization, she had to expose the full reality, so everyone could see how deeply prejudice ran. Outside, the rain continued to lash the windows, wind pounding the glass as if to shatter the false calm within. Leora sat quietly, taking it all in. She understood that the real storm was still to come, and this was only the beginning of the day that would force her to confront the very biases entrenched in the company she owned. After several tense minutes in the lounge, Leora finally rose and slipped back into her damp raincoat. Her heels clicked softly on the marble floor, each step carrying an invisible weight. She walked through the wide glass doors toward the airport apron, the sky outside still heavy and overcast, an odd mirror of her mood. Not far off, Leora's private jet, a gleaming white Gulfstream worth millions, waited on the tarmac, but as she approached the boarding stairs, a flight attendant in her crisp uniform stepped forward as if waiting to bar her way. It was Vivian Sloan, the head attendant renowned for her keen eye in sizing up passengers, and whose pride was about to lead her to the worst mistake of her life. Vivian surveyed Leora from head to toe with blatant judgment. Her eyes glinted with suspicion and disdain. Leora paused briefly and reached for her documents. But Vivian cut her off before she could speak. "Sorry, but this is a private jet. You're not allowed to board." Leora felt as if a bucket of ice water had been thrown in her face, yet she kept her composure and replied calmly, "I know exactly where I am. I'm a passenger on this flight, and I have all the proper paperwork." Vivian gave a mocking half-smile, her tone dripping with challenge. Her gaze swept over Leora's slightly damp attire and understated elegant heels before settling on the face of the black woman before her. Vivian was used to serving the kind of wealthy clientele who fit her narrow stereotype, and Leora clearly did not. "Honestly," Vivian said coldly, "you don't look like the kind of passenger we normally serve. Are you sure you're not supposed to be over at the commercial terminal? It's about a mile the other way." The barbed words cut deep into Leora's pride, yet she remained astonishingly calm once again, extending her boarding pass. "I suggest you verify my information thoroughly before making any judgments." Vivienne didn't even glance at the paper in Leora's hand. Instead, she sneered with even greater condescension, her voice loud enough to echo across the apron. "Do you know how much it costs to fly on this jet? A trip like this doesn't go for less than a very high price. I don't think that's a price most people, especially someone who looks like you, can afford." Her words drew the attention of nearby ground staff. A few glanced at one another, then quickly looked away, unwilling to get involved. Captain Brennan in the cockpit, just yards away, noticed the commotion, but chose to turn his back, telling himself it wasn't his problem. Vivian, emboldened by the silence around her, raised her voice. "Security, we have an unauthorized person attempting to board a private aircraft. We need support right away." At Vivian's call, Clifford Vance rushed over, ready to back his colleague. He looked at Leora with triumphant authority. "You need to leave immediately, ma'am. This area is restricted to eligible passengers." "I am an eligible passenger," Leora replied evenly, her gaze unwavering. "Please check the passenger manifest." But Vivian had reached her limit. Her wounded pride refused to concede, and she held up a hand to silence Leora with icy finality. "I don't need to check anything else. I've seen all kinds of people try to sneak onto this jet, and believe me, I know who our real customers are. Unfortunately, you're not one of them." At those words, the apron fell silent. For a moment, a deathly hush descended. Leora didn't flinch. She stared at Vivian with a frightful calm, though underneath burned an unbreakable resolve. "Are you absolutely certain?" Leora asked softly. No ordinary question, but her final chance to warn Vivian before the real storm hit. "I'm 100% certain," Vivian shot back, brimming with contempt, unaware that in a short while her arrogance would plunge her into an irreversible abyss. With steady hands, Leora pulled out her phone, ready to make the call that would shake Vivian, Clifford, and the entire racist system they were desperate to protect. The storm outside was closing in, and Leora knew she wasn't merely confronting a personal insult. She was standing at the forefront of a battle against deep-rooted injustice, a fight she had to win at any cost. The moment Leora lifted the phone to her ear, a flicker of doubt crossed Vivian's face. But in an instant, she snapped back into her usual steely demeanor, as if determined to assert her authority one more time before things spiraled out of control. "Where's security? We need you here immediately!" Vivian barked, keeping her eyes locked on Leora. She deliberately spoke loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear, to reinforce the impression that Leora was a suspicious interloper. Clifford Vance, having just arrived after hearing Vivian's call, stepped forward with heightened vigilance. From Vivian's expression alone, he understood the situation. Without hesitation, he stood by Vivian's side, further cementing their shared bias against Leora. "Don't you understand what we're saying?" Clifford raised his voice, his tone domineering. "We've told you to leave this area immediately. The VIP lounge isn't child for loiterers or troublemakers." Leora calmly lowered her phone slightly, fixing Clifford with an icy stare. "I think you're making a serious mistake. I'm asking you once more to check the passenger manifest before making things worse." Clifford sneered, surveying Leora from head to toe with mockery, then turned to Vivian, his tone provocatively challenging. "Vivian, what do you think about this one?" Vivian shrugged, flaunting her contempt, her voice slow and sharp as a blade. "You see, Clifford, if she really were a VIP, wouldn't one of us have recognized her immediately? I think she's just trying to sneak onto a luxury jet." Their cutting words struck at Leora's pride, but she remained composed. Again, she drew her documents from her bag and held them out to Clifford with unwavering resolve. "Here are my boarding pass and ID. I don't want to repeat myself." Clifford accepted them grudgingly, glancing over them dismissively before bursting into laughter to draw attention from the crowd. "Vivian, look at this. There's a legitimate boarding pass and a black corporate card. Impressive, but honestly, anyone can buy phony documents these days." Vivian shot Leora a look of pure disdain. "A black card? Please, anyone can fake that stuff. Do you really think that scares us?" Clifford and Vivian's forced laughter rippled around them, and other staff chuckled awkwardly, but no one dared defend Leora. The wary glances from bystanders only underscored the egregious discrimination she was enduring. Right here in the airport, she'd spent years building. Outside, the rain intensified, each icy drop bearing witness to the mounting tension. Leora stood her ground in silence, not out of weakness, but because she was waiting for the perfect moment to respond decisively. Vivian, losing patience, leaned toward Clifford and spoke low enough for Leora to hear. "If security doesn't arrive soon, we'll have to handle this ourselves." Clifford nodded in agreement, his tone threatening. "You'd best leave now. Don't make us take stronger measures." Leora remained still, her gaze piercing both of them. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but carried formidable authority. "Are you absolutely certain you want to see this through? Because once I finish this call, there's no turning back." Vivian burst into mocking laughter. "Oh, how scary. Clifford, did you hear that? She's threatening us." Clifford joined in smugly. "Yeah, you'd better make that call quick, so we can see what else you've got planned." Unfazed, Leora raised her phone to her ear and spoke each word with crystal-clear authority. "Lauren, connect me to Darius and the executive team immediately. We have a serious situation at Westchester Airport that needs urgent attention." Her icy, commanding tone made Vivian and Clifford freeze for a heartbeat, a premonition of trouble flashing in their eyes. But by the time reality sank in, it was too late to turn back. The downpour continued, each raindrop adding to the oppressive tension. Leora stood there, cold and resolute, waiting for the moment she would decisively turn the tables, when those who had insulted her would finally face consequences beyond their worst imaginings. The moment Leora's icy voice rang out over the phone, the airport seemed to grow dense and still. Only the relentless patter of heavy raindrops striking the concrete remained, like an angry drumbeat. Vivian and Clifford froze in place, unease flickering across their faces, though neither would concede an inch of their steely resolve. "Lauren, connect me to Darius and the full board of directors right now," Leora said calmly into the phone, her tone brimming with authority that made anyone within earshot instinctively step back. "I need an emergency meeting immediately. There's a serious issue at Westchester Airport that cannot be ignored." Hearing the name Darius, known company-wide as the COO, Vivian visibly jolted, but she quickly forced herself to believe Leora was merely performing some high-stakes drama to escape her embarrassment. Clifford, mask of derision firmly in place, curled his lip in a cold sneer. "Call whoever you like," he scoffed. But don't count on anyone buying your little CEO routine. This isn't your stage. Leora didn't react to his taunt. Her eyes remained focused, tranquil, yet hard as granite, as if sizing up exactly when to deliver her knockout blow. Seconds later, Darius Hale's clear voice crackled through the line. "Leora, it's Darius. Are you all right? What's this emergency about?" Leora looked Vivian and Clifford dead in the eye, her voice ringing out precise, unwavering, absolute. "I'm being blocked from boarding my own private jet by our own employees at Westchester. They're telling me I'm unqualified to fly on my own plane. Call an immediate board meeting to address this. I am Leora Hale, CEO of Hale Aviation, and this is completely unacceptable." Each word landed like a hammer blow on Vivian and Clifford's nerves. Vivian felt a jolt run down her spine and glanced at Clifford for backup, only to see his confident facade beginning to crumble. Still, Vivian's pride and stubbornness overpowered her fear. She forced a laugh, speaking loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Clifford, did you hear that? Now she's claiming to be the CEO. Hilarious. Maybe next she'll announce herself President of the United States." Clifford, though secretly rattled, doubled down alongside her. "Exactly, Vivian. She's so desperate she's impersonating our leadership. Pathetic." Despite their attempts at composure, Clifford's voice briefly wavered. He scanned the bystanders for support, but no one dared meet Leora's gaze. The VIP area fell into an oppressive hush, broken only by the pounding rain outside. Leora remained silent, letting Darius speak. "Understood, Leora. I'll handle this right away. I'll be there as soon as I can." She ended the call and slid her phone into her pocket. Turning back to Vivian and Clifford with a steely glare, she spoke softly, but with unmistakable menace. "Vivian Sloane, Clifford Vance, I suggest you both consider very carefully the words you just spat, because every insult you lobbed at me today will be used as evidence against you." Vivian tried to suppress the rising panic, but her eyes betrayed her inner turmoil. You're trying to threaten us. Let me tell you something. Whoever you are, that doesn't change a thing. We were only doing our job, protecting the company's real passengers." Clifford gave a feeble nod, but said nothing more. Sweat beaded at his brow as his eyes darted around, searching for a way out of the mess they'd made. Leora studied them one last time. Disappointment and cold resolve etched in her expression. "I gave you one final chance to recognize your mistake. Clearly, you don't grasp the severity of what you've done. From now on, you will be fully accountable for every action you take." With that, she stepped aside and waited. In a short while, when Darius and the board arrived, Vivian and Clifford's arrogance and prejudice would evaporate like rain in the sun. The downpour continued, each drop washing away the company's long-hidden ugliness. Amid the storm's fury, Leora stood resolute, ready to wage the toughest battle of her career, tearing down injustice and defending the values she'd spent years building. As Leora stands there, calm yet commanding, the airport falls into a heavy, suffocating silence. The rain pounds harder against the concrete, its violent rhythm echoing the turmoil playing out among these people. From the door of her private jet, Captain Brennan and First Officer Delgado step out, their faces etched with skepticism and concern. As seasoned pilots, they've handled plenty of complex situations, but the tension before them now far exceeds anything they've ever seen. Captain Brennan glances at Leora, immediately struck by her natural authority and composed confidence. He's been with Hale Aviation long enough to know that nobody projects power like that unless they truly hold it. And a knot of unease tightens in his gut. First Officer Delgado, standing beside him, leans in and murmurs, "Captain, something's not right here. Maybe we should verify her identity again." Captain Brennan nods slightly, But before he can respond, Rafael Soto, the ground supervisor who's been watching quietly from a distance, finally steps forward. His face is a mix of hesitation and resolve as he clears his throat and says, "Vivian, Clifford, I really think we ought to recheck her paperwork. We could be making a serious mistake." Vivian whirls on Rafael, her eyes flashing with anger at his interference. She cuts him off sharply, her resentment bare. "Rafael, I don't need you telling me how to do my job. I know exactly who I'm dealing with. If you don't want to get dragged into this, step back." Her harsh words push Rafael back a step. The other staff exchange sympathetic but wary glances. None dare speak up. Clifford crosses his arms and addresses Rafael with a smug smirk. "You heard her, Rafael. This isn't your responsibility. Don't stir up trouble for yourself." Rafael's pride stings, but he lacks the authority to challenge his superiors. He lowers his head and reluctantly retreats, regret flickering in his eyes for the chance to set things right slipping away. Captain Brennan watches this unfold and feels his own unease deepen. He steps toward Vivian, striving for professionalism, though his voice cracks with tension. "Vivian, at least let's double-check the passenger manifest one more time. The fallout could be far worse than we think." Vivian glares at him colder than ever. "I told you already. If you don't have anything else to do, get back to the cockpit and do your job. I take full responsibility." Captain Brennan stands stunned. He's never felt so powerless and ashamed. As an experienced pilot, he knows that silence in the face of injustice makes you complicit. Yet in that moment, fear for his safety and career freezes him in place. First Officer Delgado watches his captain's inner struggle, feeling equally ashamed. But like everyone else, he can't summon the courage to speak up. Meanwhile, Vivian and Clifford grow more emboldened, having quashed any attempt at intervention. Vivian turns back to Leora with a challenging smirk. "See, nobody here buys your little act. You'd better leave before this gets any more awkward." Leora remains silent, her eyes brimming with disappointed resolve. Anger has given way to a cold clarity. She realizes she's not only fighting for herself, but for everyone who's ever been silenced by complicity, cowardice, and compromise in the face of injustice. The rain continues to lash down mercilessly, as though punishing the indifference and cruelty of those around her. Leora's gaze sweeps the group, from Vivian's arrogance and Clifford's obstinacy to Rafael's lingering regret, finally resting on Captain Brennan and First Officer Delgado, who avert her eyes. In that instant, Leora understands that real change won't come from those who willingly look away. It must come from her, from the decisive action she's about to take. She glances at her watch, then steps forward and states calmly, "In a short while, you'll see exactly who should be leaving this place." Leora's measured, authoritative words ring out over the storm, heralding a whirlwind of accountability that's about to sweep through the airport, one that will wash away the deep-seated prejudice and injustice long tolerated in the company she built. The rain continued to pummel Westchester Airport, the cold droplets striking the windows in a torrential blur that seemed determined to hide the mistakes and injustices unfolding inside. After Leora's sharp warning, the air around her grew thick with tension and doubt. Vivian and Clifford did their best to maintain their tough exteriors, but unease was creeping unmistakably into their eyes. Leora slowly retrieved her phone once more, this time with decisive authority. She turned away from the spiteful whispers behind her, took a measured few steps, and then made a second call. Her voice rang out sharp and unwavering. "Julian Crow, I need you to immediately secure and pull every security camera recording from Westchester Airport over the recent period. We have a serious racial discrimination incident that needs to be investigated right away." Julian Crow, head of security at Hale Aviation, recognized the gravity in her tone and replied crisply, "Understood, Ms. Hale. I'll dispatch our security team there immediately. We'll handle it swiftly." Leora gave a single nod and ended the call without another word. Her action only ratcheted up the pressure on Vivian and Clifford. They found themselves scanning the area, wondering just how much damning footage the cameras had captured. Vivian swallowed hard, fear rising in her chest for the first time since the ordeal began. Clifford, though still trying to appear composed, felt his hand begin to tremble. Their arrogance and stubbornness had given way to whispered worry, doubt gnawing at them as they contemplated the consequences ahead. Amid this charged atmosphere, a small figure stepped forward. Sienna Reyes, the young ramp attendant who'd witnessed everything. Guilt and bravery warred on her face as she approached Leora, bowed her head, and spoke in a trembling but heartfelt voice. "Ms. Hale, I want to sincerely apologize for everything you've been through. This was a grievous mistake, and I'm truly ashamed that I stood by and couldn't speak up to protect you." Leora's eyes softened. Amid the storm's chill and the cruelty of prejudice, Sienna's simple, honest apology was a small, warming light. She inclined her head gently. "Thank you. Your courage means a great deal to me. I hope that from now on, no one else has to endure this." Vivian's face twisted with anger at the display. She strode over and cut Sienna off with a cold, challenging edge. "Sienna, you have no authority here. Go back to your post immediately before I take more serious action against you." Sienna flinched at Vivian's harsh rebuke, fear flickering in her eyes. But before Vivian could act, Leora stepped in, placing a reassuring hand on Sienna's shoulder and fixing Vivian with a look of absolute authority. "Vivian, it's you who should worry about the serious measures I'm about to take." Leora's calm but commanding words froze Vivian in her tracks, as though doused with ice water. Clifford involuntarily stepped back, his trembling hand betraying that the situation had entirely slipped from their control. Rafael Soto, standing nearby, watched Sienna's brave gesture and felt ashamed of his own earlier cowardice. Captain Brennan and First Officer Delgado witnessed it too, regret plain in their eyes. Every silent bystander now understood the price of indifference and cowardice. Leora released Sienna's shoulder with a nod of gratitude, then turned her gaze back to Vivian and Clifford. Her voice, cold and sharp as steel, cut through the downpour. "In a short while, when the security footage is made public, I promise you both will pay dearly for the prejudice and arrogance you've sown in this company." Vivian and Clifford stood speechless. Their initial confidence and pride had melted into confusion and fear. The rain still poured as though cleansing away the long-tolerated bigotry and injustice. Leora remained motionless, eyes fixed on the horizon where Darius and the security team would arrive. She knew that in a matter of moments the truth would be fully revealed, and Vivian and Clifford would face an unimaginable reckoning. Her fight against injustice, prejudice, and cruelty was only just beginning. And this time, she would not rest until no one else suffered as she had today. Leora's cold warning still echoed through the oppressive air, sharpening the tension at the airport. Vivian, though panic was starting to show on her face, forced herself to maintain her usual arrogance, as if somehow her authority and biases could carry her through this crisis. The rain showed no sign of letting up, each drop seeming to wash away hidden secrets and facades between them. Amid the chaos, Captain Brennan quietly pulled a tablet from his jacket. Unease gnawed at him until he could bear his doubts no longer. He tapped the screen to revisit the flight manifest one last time. His hand trembled as the list appeared, and his eyes immediately locked on the very first entry. A brief line carrying enough weight to make his heart nearly stop. L. Hale, owner/CEO. For a moment, all sounds around Captain Brennan faded away, replaced by the thunderous pounding of his own heart. He looked up at Leora standing motionless, radiating undeniable authority, and realized there was no going back now. My God, Captain Brennan whispered, his lips quivering. First Officer Delgado, standing beside him, noticed the odd expression and glanced at the tablet. His face went pale, as if he'd seen a ghost. "No way. She really is the owner of Hale Aviation," Delgado murmured, his voice shaking. That whisper spread to the ground crew nearby. They froze in place, eyes full of fear and remorse as they glanced at Leora. Rafael Soto lowered his head, shame and regret washing over him. He wished he'd acted differently just moments earlier. Vivienne, still not fully grasping the revelation, snapped back, her voice cutting through the moment. "I don't know what she thinks she's doing, but this circus ends right now. Vivienne," Captain Brennan interrupted sharply, his tone firmer than usual, though still trembling. "You need to see this immediately." Vivienne frowned in irritation and turned to Captain Brennan, only to freeze solid when she read the tablet screen. Her smug expression vanished, replaced by sheer panic and desperation at the irreversible mistake she'd made. "L. Hale, CEO," she stammered, her voice a frightened whisper. Clifford Vance, standing beside her, went ashen, like he'd been punched in the gut. All his earlier confidence and arrogance collapsed into utter terror and confusion. The other staffers hung their heads, avoiding Leora's steely gaze, their hearts heavy with shame and regret. They understood now that their silence and indifference had helped create this painful moment. Leora stood before them, no words needed. The truth spoke for itself. Her silent authority was more terrifying than any reprimand. She knew the next few minutes would mark the start of her most important revolution at Hale Aviation. A full-scale reckoning against the prejudices that had silently undermined the company she'd built. In the cold, driving rain, Vivienne and Clifford stood stunned and broken, finally grasping the immense price they'd pay for their bias and arrogance. But by then, it was too late to undo anything. The truth had burst forth, washing away every lie and injustice they'd long tried to hide. As Vivienne and Clifford still stood frozen in shock over the truth that had just been revealed, the wail of sirens erupted outside the airport lobby, shattering the already suffocating tension. Through the sheets of rain, a convoy of glossy black SUVs screeched up to the entrance. The door of the lead vehicle swung open, and Darius Hale stepped out, flanked by the company's top attorneys, HR executives, and security team. Darius's expression was ice, his gaze blade-sharp with a fury seldom seen from the famously composed COO. The moment Darius entered the VIP area, every employee fell silent, their breaths caught in their throats. Scanning the room, his eyes locked on Leora, still standing there, outwardly composed, but clearly wounded inside. Watching his sister, the woman who had poured her heart and soul into building Hale Aviation, be treated like a criminal on her own flight, ignited Darius's anger into a blaze. "Leora, are you okay?" Darius strode quickly to her side, his voice gentle, but laced with concern. Leora gave him a small nod, forcing her usual strength to the surface, even as pain lingered in her eyes. "I'm okay, Darius, but I don't think our company is." Darius understood immediately what she meant. He swept a cold, authoritative glance over the terrified faces of the staff. Vivienne dared not raise her head. Her hands trembled as they clasped together. Clifford, standing beside her, looked pale. His previous arrogance completely drained away. "What on earth happened here?" Darius's low, commanding voice cut through the silence, eliciting a collective gasp. "Why was my sister, the CEO of Hale Aviation, treated like a criminal on her own plane?" Vivienne's throat tightened, and her feet felt rooted to the spot, yet her stubborn streak still flickered. She managed a stammered response, her voice stripped of confidence. "Mr. Hale, we were just doing our duty to protect—" "Protect whom?" Darius's interruption was sharp as a knife. "Protect genuine passengers, or protect your own blind prejudice and discrimination? Darius's pointed question echoed through the lounge, silencing Vivian completely. Her face drained of color, frozen in fear. Clifford fared no better. He stepped back, lips trembling as he fumbled for an excuse. We didn't recognize her. We thought, Darius pressed, his tone harsher still. You thought a black woman couldn't possibly own Hale Aviation, or that your ignorance and prejudice were strong enough to override plain fact. Nobody dared meet his gaze. Heads bowed, eyes fixed on the rain-slicked floor, remorse and fear swirling in their hearts. Rafael Soto hovered at the back, his shame at having done nothing now palpable. Darius motioned to his security detail to start securing the area and preserving all surveillance footage. Julian Crow and his team sprang into action, sealing off the lounge and ensuring every piece of evidence remained intact. I want a full briefing on every detail of this incident, Darius declared, his voice firm and unwavering. You will all explain exactly why you treated Leora this way. Vivian's eyes filled with terror as she looked to Darius. She realized there was no escaping the consequences. Clifford, standing beside her, could only watch in utter despair as the gravity of their mistake sank in. Captain Brennan approached Darius with a respectful yet ashamed bow. Mr. Hale, I've verified the manifest. This was entirely our error. Grave mistake. Darius nodded curtly, though his gaze remained steely. I appreciate your belated honesty, Captain Brennan, but it doesn't excuse your initial silence. You were responsible for the Sululbar light, and you should have intervened immediately. Captain Brennan's shoulders slumped in defeat. He could offer no further defense. Beside him, Leora watched the scene unfold, feeling the surge of strength and resolve Darius had brought. She knew this moment marked a turning point in her fight against the injustice and prejudice that had long lurked within Hale Aviation. Turning to his sister, Darius's tone softened, but stayed resolute. You're not alone anymore, Leora. I promise you, we will do everything in our power to make sure no one else ever endures this. Leora nodded, buoyed by Darius's decisive arrival and the professionalism he'd marshaled. She understood that at last the truth would come fully to light, and that people like Vivian and Clifford would pay the price for their cruelty and bias. Outside, the rain began to ease, as if even the storm itself were witnessing the dawn of accountability, a testament to bravery and the power to stand up against the deep-seated injustice that had festered in the dark too long. The moment Darius reaffirmed his determination to get to the bottom of this, Leora gently placed a hand on her brother's shoulder in a gesture of deep gratitude. She turned and gazed at the private jet, a symbol of power and success, but now also the very place where prejudice and injustice had bitterly unraveled. I want everyone on that plane immediately, Leora said, her voice cold yet composed, loud enough for every person in the hangar to hear. We're going to sort this out right here. Vivian and Clifford froze, as if cemented in the pouring rain. There was nothing left to do but obey her razor-sharp command. Captain Brennan, deeply regretful, and the other staff silently followed Leora and Darius into the luxurious cabin of the private jet. Once the door closed, Leora strode to the head of the conference table, her rare aura of authority silencing everyone instantly. Darius stood beside her, his gaze stern and resolute. The team of lawyers and HR specialists quickly laid out the relevant files, while security officers took up positions at the doors. Leora fixed Vivian and Clifford with an icy cold stare and spoke in a voice as sharp as steel. I want to hear directly from both of you why you treated me, the CEO of this company, as an intruder, someone unworthy of boarding the plane I own. Vivienne swallowed hard, her throat constricted by fear and shame. She managed a faint, quivering reply. Ms. Hale, I was only following security procedure. I'm used to distinguishing between genuine VIPs and those attempting unauthorized access. Leora cut her off immediately, her eyes icier than ever. Does your security procedure include judging passengers by skin color and appearance, or was it your personal prejudices that decided who belongs on this plane? Vivienne fell silent, her cheeks burning with mortification. She had no further defense for her bigotry. Clifford fared no better. He lowered his head, avoiding Leora's piercing gaze, and offered a feeble explanation. I just wanted to support Vivienne. I didn't realize it would become such a serious matter. Not serious, Leora echoed, her tone chilling. You don't think publicly humiliating the CEO of this corporation, denying her the use of her own property, is serious? Do you even comprehend the consequences of your actions? The cabin sank into a deathly quiet. Each of Leora's words was an invisible blade, slicing through the toxic irrationality that had guided Vivienne and Clifford. No one dared speak further. Captain Brennan stood by helplessly. He recognized his error, but could offer no excuse. Leora turned her gaze to Captain Brennan, her expression still severe, but slightly moderated from her interrogation of Vivienne and Clifford. Captain Brennan, I understand you've admitted your mistake, but that doesn't change the fact that you were responsible for this flight, and your silence enabled this situation. I have no choice but to suspend you pending a full investigation. Captain Brennan nodded wordlessly, accepting the remorse etched deeply on his face. Finally, Leora faced Vivienne and Clifford once more, her declaration clear and uncompromising. Vivienne Sloan and Clifford Vance, effective immediately, you are both terminated from Hale Aviation. I will not tolerate any form of discrimination in my company. You have a short time to collect your personal belongings under security supervision. Vivienne and Clifford trembled, faces ashen, utterly drained of strength to protest. The power they once wielded had evaporated before Leora's authoritative pronouncement. Leora continued, her voice soft, but carrying immense weight. Everyone here, remember this day. This isn't just about the personal failures of two individuals. It's a profound lesson in how prejudice and racism can destroy an entire system if left unchecked. Her final words echoed through the cabin, heavy with conviction. The staff fell silent, exchanging looks of shame. They finally grasped the grave cost of their own complicity and silence. Darius gently placed a hand on Leora's shoulder, his voice tender, yet unwavering. Leora, from this moment forward, we will do more than punish those who were at fault. We will root out the culture that allowed such prejudice to flourish. Leora nodded firmly. She knew this reckoning was not only the end for people like Vivienne and Clifford, but also the beginning of a new era at Hale Aviation, one where bias has no place and fairness reigns supreme. Outside the window, the rain finally let up, revealing the first rays of sunlight, a sign that justice had arrived at last. When the first rays of sunshine after the rain peered through the windows of the private jet, Leora gazed out and felt as though a new chapter in Hale Aviation's history had just begun. She knew that firing Vivienne and Clifford and suspending Captain Brennan were only the first steps on a difficult journey to uproot the deep-seated biases embedded in the company's culture. Immediately after that tense meeting on board, Leora and Darius called a company-wide gathering with every member of senior management, HR, and legal in attendance. The tone was solemn and serious. Every word Leora spoke carried unmistakable authority and determination. From this day forward, Leora declared, meeting the eyes of every employee, Hale Aviation will not only be a leader in service, but also a beacon of ethics and equality in the workplace. We will never allow mistakes like today's to happen again. She then unveiled a comprehensive cultural overhaul plan. Human Resources was instructed to launch a mandatory specialized training program on combating racism and unconscious bias, required for everyone from entry-level staff to the executive team. With strict completion standards, "We must confront these prejudices within each of us," Leora emphasized to the entire staff, "and have the courage to face them head-on, eradicating them at the root. Only when every one of us truly acknowledges these issues will our company culture transform." Next, Leora ordered the immediate creation of an anonymous third-party managed hotline. Every complaint of bias, discrimination, or injustice would be taken seriously and handled fairly. No wrongdoing would be ignored or excused. "Let me be clear," she said. "This hotline isn't about creating division. It's a vital tool to build trust, uphold justice, and prevent regrettable errors." Leora's next bold move was to implement an AI system designed to detect prejudiced language and behavior in daily communications, emails, meetings, and internal chats. "Technology doesn't favor anyone or get swayed by emotion," she explained to her management team. "AI will be our vigilant partner, catching the subtle warning signs humans might miss." Amid this sweeping reform, Leora also made it a point to recognize and reward courage and integrity. Sienna Reyes, the young ramp attendant who had bravely stepped forward to apologize to Leora in the midst of that public humiliation, was immediately promoted to Senior Customer Service Manager. "I'm promoting Sienna not just for her kindness," Leora told the assembled staff, "but because I believe she'll pioneer the fair and respectful workplace we're building." Rafael Soto, who despite initial hesitation had spoken up to suggest double-checking Leora's credentials, was also acknowledged. Leora and Darius recognized that his eventual courage deserved reward, especially when so few had dared to do the same. "Rafael showed us what fairness and professional integrity look like, even knowing he might face isolation," Darius said. "That sense of responsibility deserves to be nurtured." Rafael was named Regional Director, tasked with overseeing service quality and corporate culture across Hale Aviation. Leora trusted that his experience and character would help set a new standard where fairness, scrupulous, and honesty are prerequisites. As the meeting progressed, the atmosphere shifted from its earlier heaviness to one of genuine hope and resolve. Employees began to feel the strength and decisiveness Leora brought, understanding that Hale Aviation was not only reorganizing, but also building a firmer ethical foundation. Before adjourning, Leora stood again, her voice brimming with inspiration. "From today on, Hale Aviation will never be judged solely by revenue or profit. We will be judged by how we treat one another, by how we fight injustice, and by how we create the fairest, most civilized workplace possible. With unity and courage, we can and will become a model for the aviation industry and beyond." Thunderous applause filled the cabin, marking a true cultural revolution at Hale Aviation. And as Leora looked toward the future, she knew that while challenges remained, she and her company were heading in the right direction, where the light of justice would never fade. Leora's bold decisions quickly ignited a movement that reached far beyond the walls of Hale Aviation. Just days after the overhaul was announced, the story of a black female CEO standing up decisively against racial prejudice within her own company swept the national headlines. Not only did it capture the public's attention, but it also became a celebrated case study at Harvard Business School, aptly titled Hale Aviation and the Corporate Revolution Against Discrimination. Universities, leading corporations, and corporate governance experts all began citing Leora's example as a pivotal lesson in building a healthy organizational culture. From what had seemed like a bitter crisis, Leora forged a meaningful legacy, awakening a heightened sense of social responsibility and business ethics throughout the corporate world. Her reputation for courage and radical reform soon reached the halls of Congress. Sometime after the incident, Leora was invited to testify at a special hearing on corporate social responsibility. Standing in the solemn chamber of the Capitol, she addressed lawmakers with clarity and conviction. No company can truly take pride in its profits if those profits were built on injustice and prejudice. Social responsibility is not a choice. It is an absolute obligation for anyone in power. That short but powerful speech drew thunderous applause and further amplified her message. Leora Hale, the woman who had endured the worst indignities yet chose to rise and fight for justice, became a living symbol of courage and ethical leadership. Then, after the controversy had settled, a twist no one saw coming unfolded. Vivian Sloan, the once antagonistic executive who had inflicted deep wounds on Leora, publicly issued a letter of apology via major media outlets. In it, Vivian took full responsibility for her actions and apologized to Leora and everyone hurt by her misconduct. With heartfelt candor, Vivian wrote, "I've spent time reflecting on my mistakes. I thought I understood the world, but the truth is I only saw a distorted fragment shaped by my own prejudice and ignorance. I sincerely apologize to Ms. Hale and to all those harmed by my actions." Reading Vivian's words, Leora sensed genuine remorse. She understood that truly transforming a company's culture meant not only removing those who'd done wrong, but also offering sincere wrongdoers a path to redemption. So Leora extended Vivian a special opportunity. She invited her to join Hale Aviation's new anti-bias training program, not as a regular employee, but as someone sharing her painful experience to help colleagues grasp the real cost of prejudice. Over time, Vivian Sloan became a powerful example of bravery in confronting and correcting one's own errors. Her journey from prejudiced antagonist to genuinely reformed advocate inspired thousands, proving that positive change is never too late. Finally, once the turbulence had settled into a new stable course, Leora returned home for her father Harlan Hale's birthday. In the warm embrace of family and loved ones, Harlan rose, his eyes shining with pride and emotion, and spoke from the heart. "Leora, my daughter, you have done something extraordinary. You've taught all of us that power without purpose is mere privilege, and that power with purpose can truly change the world." His words resonated throughout the room, moving everyone deeply. Leora looked at her father with tears of pride, knowing that every bitterness and hardship she had endured had been transformed into invaluable lessons and a living legacy for the next generation. What began as a painful and humiliating episode became the cornerstone of an inspiring legacy, one that sparked courage, empathy, and social responsibility in business. Leora Hale's name is remembered not only for her professional success, but for her bravery in confronting injustice and prejudice, becoming a shining emblem of the transformative power of positive change. Leora's story is more than the tale of a talented CEO's rise from adversity to triumph. It is a powerful reminder that real strength lies in the courage to fight injustice and bias. By turning her own pain into the catalyst for a company-wide cultural shift, she inspired thousands to recognize and champion fairness. What about you? Would you have the courage to stand up against injustice the way Leora did? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to help spread this meaningful message far and wide. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.